science when it comes to doing dry fasting properly. That's why people don't get cured, because they don't know how to do it properly, right? Let alone the fact that they don't do it for an enough length of time. So in this part 3, we're gonna talk about some principles of doing it properly. So you can see how the science is extremely complicated, but let's just talk about the important elements, okay? So glycogen in your glycogen is the, I don't know, fuel in your muscles, especially, that gets released when you stop eating. Now, before you deplete glycogen, you won't enter any autophagic state. So the glycogen in your body is the equivalent of a full day of energy burned. But if you don't do anything, if you don't eat in the first day of dry fasting, then you won't burn all the glycogen. So, probably it's going to take 1.5 to 2 days just to clear up your glycogen in the body. So if you do a 3-day dry fast, then you're going to sacrifice the first 1.5 to 2 days on depleting the glycogen, right? Depleting glycogen plus 1 to 1.5 days of actual fasting. Okay? So this is with glycogen. So without glycogen in your body, when you enter the 3-day dry fast, it's basically 3 days of actual fast. So you can see how it gets 2 to 3 times better without glycogen, right? So what does it mean to not have glycogen in the system? Well, glycogen gets produced. Okay, so basically when you eat stuff, it comes in the form of micronutrients, of course, but they are not burned for calories. What's burned for calories is the macronutrients. So you have the protein, and then you have the fats, and then you have the carbs, right? Sugar is a carb. And the protein and fat gets processed differently than the carbs. The carbs go into the glucose in the blood and in the brain, like give you like a dopamine and whatever, kind of like a quick fuel. And then there's the glycogen, so it's some sort of a emergency storage system where stuff gets released from there in between meals. That's why you can resist without eating. But if you eat a bunch of carbs, then it also goes into the fat. So the science of getting fat is because, if you imagine that there's this particular compartment of how much glucose you can put in your blood, and this is how much glycogen you can put in your system, if you eat more carbs than this particular amount in a particular meal, then it starts accessing the fat. But if you always, take care not to eat more carbs than those particular boxes, then the carbs don't enter the fat, right? So you can eat cake and chocolate and sugar and drink Coke, and you won't get fat as long as it's contained within those 2 pockets, right? Anyway, since people are eating carbs every single day, the glycogen is always full. So how do you get rid of the glycogen? Well, you need, because since you're eating protein and fats together with a meal, you would probably need at least minimum 3 days without eating any carbs, like 0 carbs, to get rid of the glycogen. Now, in the transition period, it's called getting keto adapted. So the transition stage is painful if you just eat protein and fat. And you don't want to have like a painful period of 3 days and then another painful period of dry fasting. So what you want to do is you want to eat like 1 week before entering the dry fast, like 0 carbs, because it's going to take you 3 painful days to get keto adapted, and it's just going to take you another 4 days to kind of feel good about the situation, like biologically. It's sort of like a break before the dry fasting begins, right? So I would encourage at least 1 week before the dry fast, both for the effectiveness standpoint, but also for the effort standpoint. And 1 week 0 carbs. This is like very important for the effectiveness, right? So in this video we talk about the effectiveness. Okay, so the first principle is the 0 glycogen. Okay, what's the second principle? You see how important that is? Okay, 0 sodium, right? Because body gets released, and then the body releases water, and then the body understands that, oh my god, we are depleting water, and the whole point of the body getting into those states of repair mode is because it understands that we're exhausting water, right? So if we deplete water, then we get more autophagy. So zero sodium, right? So that's, you know, zero salt. 1 week before. Awesome. So that's the second principle. The third principle is the, let's see, okay, digestibility, right? So all of those are before the dry fast. We're gonna talk about after the dry fast, after the principles of before the dry fast, yeah? So digestibility. Well, digestion uses some particular resources of the body, and it turns out that animal fat and animal protein from meat, essentially, exhausts the body in some ways. So it's good to avoid meat, at least 2 days before the dry fast. Okay, so just to give you some sort of an impression of what to eat, right? So you don't eat carbs, and also you don't eat meat. So what the hell do you eat, right? Okay, so you eat spirulina. You eat algae, right? You eat a bunch of algae and spirulina. From they contain a bunch of stuff. You can eat very little seafood, like prawns, like oysters, like what, octopus, but very little, right? Very little eggs, right? So you don't eat carbs, you don't eat fruit, you don't eat those because those are carbohydrates, right? So we have to focus on protein that's very easily to digest, right? And we're pretty much used to the protein from meat, right? So that's why I'm giving you those suggestions, because it's pretty hard to find protein that's not from meat. Okay, lentils are a great source of protein. Now if we go to mushrooms and say mushrooms protein content, let's say mushrooms macro. You see, mushrooms, even though they contain a bunch of protein, they contain carbs, right? So we don't include them. Okay, so we have probably an egg or 2 eggs max, some seafood, some spirulina pills or whatever powder, algae, a bunch, the more you can get the better, and then a bunch of lentils, right? So we kind of cover the protein aspect, and then we put fats. Okay, now the fat that Yannick recommends is coconut oil and avocado oil, but very little. Okay, so those are pretty much the things that you should eat 3 days before, right? And then like 4 days before the 3 days, so basically before 4 days, just amp up everything here, just amp it up, like eat a bunch of seafood, eat a bunch of eggs, eat a bunch of coconut oil and avocado oil, and like you can eat all of those like a bunch, but 3 days before just eat less than from those things, right? Because those things give you more digestive pressure, right? And focus more on those. Okay, so basically I kind of like tackled the 1 week before. And then the last principle that I want to say is osmolytes, right? So you just take a bunch of taurine, and like a bunch, like if it's recommended to take 2 pills, you take 8 a day, right? So you just take a bunch of taurine to help the osmolytes. Those are going to protect your cell structures from being damaged while you're dry fasting. That's very, very important. So this is how you do it effectively. Imagine somebody that went into the dry fast with a bunch of sodium and with a bunch of glycogen after eating complex animal proteins and without osmolytes in his system. So his dry fast would be 20% effective compared to this, right? And basically you in 1 day of dry fast, you do as much as he does in 5 days, just because of those 4 principles. You see, there are other principles obviously, but I'm talking about the significant ones, right? Because if you go in everything that's important, well, you can go down to 30 principles, right? Are you gonna do them? No, just do the important ones, right? It's all about knowing what's really important. Right, so we talked about the effectiveness pre dry fast, and now let's talk about the effectiveness post dry fast. Right, so effectiveness post dry fast. Okay, when you exit, it's very important for the first 6 hours to drink water, like small sips, because that's how you restart your system, your digestive system. If you eat something in the first 6 hours, you're gonna mess up your system and your newly produced stem cells, right? So small sips of water, small sips. You can sip water, you can take a sip every 5 minutes. So this is one principle. Another principle is that you want to focus on fruit, different fruits, like all sorts of fruits, like after the 6 hours, right? So then you focus on fruits and you focus on rice, you focus on potatoes. Oh, by the way, great fruit is watermelon, right? Okay, so rice, potatoes, you know, sweet potatoes. So the more varied the fruit, the better, right? And then you put mushrooms, and you put all the things from here, okay? From the before the dry fast. Okay, so you eat in this particular manner as much as you can, like 1 or 2 weeks. Right? You don't eat meat, like pork or chicken or beef or any, you know, red meat, because of the digestibility thing. And also you want to stuff your body with as much micronutrients from a fruit, oh, and vegetables as possible, right? Eggs, a bunch of eggs. Okay? Now things would be much more complicated, but if you just keep those, then you're very, very set. So there's another thing that I wanted to say apart from eating. Oh yeah, you have like a bunch of stem cells being produced when you exit the dry fast, right? So those stem cells are very, very sensitive. They can be killed very easily. So for example, if you don't get them enough carbs, so in this case we need carbs, okay? Before the dry fast, we don't want carbs. After the dry fast, we want the carbs because stem cells thrive on glucose, okay? Glucose and glycogen, maybe glycogen. So you have to give them a bunch of carbs, healthy carbs. Now, they will be destroyed by processed food and additives, right? So avoid those. Avoid coffee. Caffeine kills stem cells. Avoid nicotine. Nicotine kills stem cells, right? The more you can avoid coffee and nicotine, the better, right? Like a month. Avoid bad stuff. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the effectiveness, and I want to make two last remarks. The first one, let's see. The first one is that I've noticed that if you eat, let's say 3 meals a day or 2 meals a day or whatever, the day before the dry fast, just keep those times, just eat normally, right? And let's say you eat your last meal at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m., right? Start the dry fast right then. It's better because you have the night to your advantage, right? It counts into the dry fast, right? So then the first day will be until the second day, 10 p.m., right? So this is the first day. And then you have the second day, you have the third day, you have the fourth day, and then you have the fifth day, right? Now, in the fifth day, you can drink water and eat. You can drink water at, let's say, 8 to 10, and you can eat at, let's say, 2 a.m., right? If you're a night owl, you can eat a bunch of fruit and whatever. So you are basically, you are basically eating this day, and you are eating, like, this day. So effectively, the days that you're not eating and drinking water are day 2, day 3, day 4, because in day 1 you kind of like have the resources from just before, right? And then the daytime kind of like lasts like half, where you're kind of like exhausted the resources after the night, right? So it counts as like half, right? And we can say that day 5 is half as well, right? So in a sense, the pain is like this half and those 3 and then this half, right? And this is what I've noticed is the best way to make the schedule, okay? The second point that I want to make is that, look, if you do 3 days of dry fasting properly, like I've explained, you are going to get a benefit. Now, here's how the benefit would look like, okay? So we have 3 days, right? 24 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours, right? So those are like 48 hours, right? Now, your body starts producing stem cells here. Stem cell production. So you are essentially producing stem cells for like 20 hours, right? Or less. If you do 4 days dry fast, right? You are producing stem cells for 20 hours plus 24 hours, right? So you have 44 hours. So if you just add an extra day, you make it twice as effective as if you did 3 days. Now, if you add 5 days, okay, right? So what's gonna be? It's gonna be 20, 24, and 24, right? So 68 hours. Okay, so what I'm saying is that if you keep it at a 5-day dry fast, this is equal to 3 times 3-day dry fast, right? And since you're gonna do a 3-day dry fast every week or every 2 weeks, well, that's about a month or more than a month that you can kill with just like a one-time 5-day dry fast, you see. So it's both more effective and also it's fast. It's like 5 days instead of a month or a month and a half. If you do a 4-day dry fast, then that's gonna be, as we can see here, 2 times as good as a 3-day dry fast, right? So why would you choose if we have the following options: 3 times 3 days dry fast versus no, let's say like this. Let's say that 6 times 3-day dry fast versus, so we have here 1 time, it was something in math, but so we have 2 here, and then we have, I think, 3 here. So yeah, this is it. Okay, so let's say that this is the amount of times it takes you to completely heal your ringing, right? So what do you want? Do you want to do 6 times 3 days, right? Let's say you do 1 3 days every 2 weeks. That takes 3 months. So do you want to do this and also do 6 times 3 days with preparation, or do you want to do this, right? So let's say this takes you 1.5 months, right? Or would you want to do this and take you a month, and you just do it 2 times, right? Like now and in like another 2 weeks, okay? So it's up to you, but the first choice is really stupid. So Liam did this, he did it 4 times. I would recommend this to do 5 days 2 times, and sure, you can do like the extreme 1 time, and you can do like 9 days or whatever, right? But yeah, I recommend either option 3 or 2. Like I would recommend option 3 more, right? So those are my, this is my outtake. Yeah, so we talked about the making the process effective in this video.